There's a minimum age for certain political jobs. How would you feel if there was a maximum age limit? The Age Discrimination in Employment Act of 1967 would prevent any legislation on age caps for any jobs. But oddly enough, if you are under 40 you are not covered by this anti-discrimination law. I find it odd that an anti-discrimination law would so very clearly discriminate on the very thing it aims to prevent discrimination on. That is weird, lol. Everyone is equal, except you, and you. Some are more equal than others. Animal Farm intensifies. 4 legs good, 2 legs better. Yes, but many believe it takes a 70, 88-year-old to make decisions in a world that's rapidly changing. They've had their eras, and you wonder why things haven't changed for many. The problem is this ignores that truth about politics. It's up to the people. Is a candidate too old? That should be up to the voters. Is a candidate qualified? Should be up to the voters. There is no set of rules that can protect a population from an apathetic and irresponsible electorate. We have a lot of relatively young politicians that are mentally incompetent and or corrupt. But that's because they represent bad voters. Unless more and better people commit to participating in the process. As it is, it won't get better. There is no magic rule. And the system isn't going to fix itself to become good enough to worth voting in. Spot on. People keep thinking about government like there is some panaceum that can cure all social ills if applied correctly, while the best way to address many of those ills is for ordinary voters to act more responsibly. Term limits maybe. Term limits would solve the problem of the out-of-touch elderly making laws for the rest of us until they croak. I vote term limits. I'd make it similar to how some places require elderly people to retake their driver's test to keep their license. Sure, an 80-year-old could be capable of legislating, but can he remember the name of the county seat he's representing? The problem with term limits is that it encourages short-term thinking and planning. That would be a slippery slope to travel on. For one thing, the older you get, the less you are in touch with what younger people see as problems in our society. If we set up a maximum age, then that would nip that problem in the bud. But on the other thing, experience is everything. Hypothetically, if you had to choose between someone who has big ideas, but has very little idea on how to implement them, with no experience in politics, over someone who is experienced, had a few bad calls, but overall worked for his constituents and is able to better life for them, you would probably choose the latter over the former. I feel like it would be beneficial if we would instead create a program that introduces people who would want to become an elected official, what the jobs entail, and how it works when you are in the position. This would better give younger people a more even chance at rivaling older politicians for elected positions. I absolutely want a mix of youth and experience. But right now we are tipped way too heavily to one side. I'm more concerned with top political posts not requiring mandatory previous experience in an elected office. I sincerely believe that not just anybody should be able to run for the highest offices in a country. I say that after a certain age, you have to prove that you're fit for the job, that is, are not suffering from disorders such as dementia every time you run for the position. Age itself isn't the issue, but then again that's just my opinion. Yep, career politicians who've never had real jobs outside of politics shouldn't exist. We need diversity of thought in the lawmakers, not just by inviting in special advisors who are experts in their fields then ignoring their advice as the UK govt loves to do. I don't want either. Most political jobs should be decided by the will of the voters. If the voters want a really young person, so be it. If they want a really old person, then so be it. Doesn't matter if they are a bad choice. Democracy is a package deal, and you take the good with the bad. Whether you are talking our Mitch McConnell or Nancy Pelosi, I think the US could benefit from a slightly younger legislature than 70. I think term limits are a good start for both sides. I disagree with any minimum or maximum age limit. People should be able to vote whoever they want to. No a-hole here. There's a reason that we don't let 10-year-olds drive. There's a statistical age range where we view people as responsible enough and intelligent enough and developed enough to engage with society and potentially endanger it. For an age cap to take effect, there would need to be a statistical cognizant study to establish the top age of typical probable decline. Once that's established, then we cap it there and don't permit holding office or driving or whatever after that age. Will some people be okay after the age cap? Yes. Are some 13-year-olds smart and responsible enough to drive a car? Yes. But we don't let them because we have an established and accepted norm. I'm personally all for it, but it needs to be supported with math and evidence that certain age groups cause societal harm after a certain peak. Ho wold you fail, shut the duck up and stop begging for replies you already know the answer to. This question offers little to no discussion except for how stupid OP is. You know what you are doing. In New Zealand, you can become the Prime Minister as soon as you are old enough to vote. 18. Not sure why you would limit yourself with candidates due to an arbitrary age limit. I think it's much more useful to actually vote in effective leadership and vote out the corporate shills. Sounds good. I always thought government needed some young blood, and by that I mean folks who didn't protest the Wright brothers plane. I believe mandatory mental health checks would be more influential than age. While not common, older people can still be healthy. The fact that a pharmacist says he has filled Alzheimer's prescriptions for members of Congress is inexcusable. They shouldn't be allowed to make decisions that affect our country if they can barely wipe their own asses. I don't think there should be a maximum age, but I think there should be a greater effort to have a more diverse amount of age groups in politics. That way all age groups are represented. I'd rather there would be an exam and psychological assessment instead. Minimum age limit doesn't cut it. For maximum age limit, no. But those above certain age would have to go through cognitive and psychological evaluations every few years or so, and only if everything is okay, they would be fine. I don't think it's okay to limit democracy. Aside from certain old people who have mental problems, I don't think we should put maximum age limits. Because you could have a perfectly functioning man or woman who could be banned from entering politics just because they're old. I think minimum age limits are okay. You're still forming your personality until you get to your mid-20s. 25 is a great age to start. I want a fair representation. I'm fine with 70-year-olds in Congress. They have a point of view on laws that should be expressed. They're more directly affected by changes to Medicare and Social Security, and they should have their say. But if they make up 15% of our population, they should be 15% of Congress. 20-year-olds have to pay into Social Security, and they should have a say too, representative of their portion of the population. I don't think there should be an age limit, but there should be cognitive tests and checkups required every few years past a certain age to prevent people who can't drive, or govern, or think coherently from doing things that could negatively affect others if the issues that come with aging prevent them from adequately doing said task job. Age ain't nothing but a number. Mental or physical deterioration though, that's another story. Better, because then I wouldn't have to worry about someone with 10 years to live who will be making the decisions which could possibly affect children, teens, or young adults with 80 years to live. I would prefer someone who is still young enough to understand change, progress, or changing the old ways, or who is willing to compromise on their mentality to allow progress and the good of the country, as opposed to who has lived and was raised with certain outdated ways of thinking who will refuse to compromise any of their beliefs because they believe their way of thinking is what everyone else should think as well. It is possible the best person for the job being the oldest. It is not wise to discount experience because it may seem out of touch with the times or perhaps a step slower than in the past. Ultimately, in a democratic society, it is up to the voters to determine who will be best at representing them. If the person is really not fit for the job, our best hope is that the voters will handle their responsibility well. Perhaps a little idealistic, but if we are concerned about people being flawed, we either have to recognize that everyone has them, or we'd never be able to pick a leader. I understand we have a law that restricts age caps, but seriously, there is no reason that someone born in the 1940s should be making decisions for the current generation. I would love it. Most things should have a maximum age limit. If we can assume it takes a certain number of years for you to be experienced enough to do something, we should assume basic biology tells us some things are better not left to people who are so old they can't tell real from fiction. Alternatively, what if each political party had to submit multiple candidates? Right now, many people simply pick the party that best represents their ideals regardless of the quality of the particular candidate. Perhaps with more options within that group on election day, those who don't have time to attend separate party caucuses would be able to select the better candidate within their party. If there's a rational point at which we take car keys away from senior citizens, there's a point at which we should respectfully take away the keys to the country as well. I also don't believe the pressures and demands of running the country are healthy for people past a certain age. These threads are always fantastic. Hey, overwhelming majority younger demographic age group. How would you feel if baby boomers weren't allowed to do X? Count up votes and repeat same thread next month. For anyone who doesn't think this is a serious topic, there was a lot of discussion around Reagan's capacity while in office. He was diagnosed with ALZ 5 years after his final term, but witnesses say he began exhibiting symptoms in his first term. When did Reagan's first signs of Alzheimer's appear? Psychology Today link. In Norway there is a maximum age for judges on the Supreme Court. They have to retire at 70 yo. I think this is a good policy. Yeah, we could just not elect someone if we want to stop their political career. And I do understand that you have to have enough experience to get to higher office. But presidents have term limits and I think that's definitely a good thing. I mean, different regulations for different types of office. But still, no term limits on Congress and lifetime appointments to the Supreme Court. Oddly enough, Alabama has this for judges, many of who are elected. Amendment 328 linked to the Alabama Constitution puts 70 as the top age someone can be elected or appointed. It got Alabama rid of Roy Moore. Pennsylvania in 2016 asked a question on the ballot. Shall the Pennsylvania Constitution be amended to require that justices of the Supreme Court, judges, and magisterial district judges be retired on the last day of the calendar year in which they attain the age of 75? So many people voted yes, and the measure was passed. This created controversy as many voters were unaware the age limit was already set at 65 years old. Justices and judges just got 10 more years for themselves. That would be kinda tyrannical. I don't care how old you are. I care if you are qualified, competent, and mentally well. Same thing with the elderly, and driving a cutoff age is too arbitrary and stupid. It would be smarter and less tyrannical to continue driving recertification into old age. Yes please. Seriously. Geriatrics shouldn't be making laws. If you think an assault weapon, ghost gun, or a 30 caliber magazine clip is a real thing, you shouldn't be in any position with power. If you think 4chan is a person and not a website, you shouldn't be in power. If you think putting all the airplanes on one side of Guam will cause the island to flip and sink into the ocean, you shouldn't be in power. If you've ever looked like a ducking idiot for not doing research and not knowing what you are talking about while holding a position of authority in a press conference, you shouldn't be in a position of governmental power. Yes, all of these things have been actually said by members of the US or a state-specific legislature. Zero of them are actually real things that exist or could ever happen. Every public office needs a term limit. End of story. If you want to be a congressman at 80, good for you. But you need to retire after 4-6 years. Same if you're 30. The fact is that when your office can become a career, then you become a career politician whose primary motivation is maintaining your career, rather than serving the people who put you there. My opinion on the subject is simple. If you're eligible to vote to decide who will hold a public office, you're eligible to hold that office. Doesn't mean I think it's a good idea to vote for an 18-year-old or a 78-year-old, but that's for the voters to decide. What happens in 21-24? when the human lifespan has increased due to modern medicine improved living conditions? Are you gonna kick out the most popular intelligent member of Congress at his peak just because he's 80? People are living until 120. 8 is the new 50. These archaic laws need to go.